This is one of the scariest shots from any horror film I've seen. Can you guess why? On the surface, it's just a woman sleeping on her couch while watching TV. But what makes this scene from 2007's Inside so damn creepy isn't what happens in the foreground, but what happens in the background. Welcome to the Art of the Scare. My name is Luke, and today's topic is the background scare. It's a shot that's been used since horror's earliest films and has evolved into a quintessential component of the genre. So what makes a great background scare? Well, perhaps the most important element is to keep the scare subdued. Now that doesn't mean it can't be easily noticed, but you want the audience to discover it for themselves, don't bash them over the head with it. A perfect example of what I mean is this scene from 2017's The Ritual. Now that was pretty creepy, but let's examine that same scene without the music cue. The quiet and subtle movement of the hand makes the scene feel more grounded and realistic. Just look at how it compares to this shot later on. But if background scares need to be subtle, then how can we direct the audience's attention to them? Well, there are three common methods. One of the most popular is to create hierarchy with the frame and shoot it so that the background dominates the screen. This will naturally draw in the audience and focus their attention. Take this scene from The Woman in Black. If there was nothing happening in the background here, then the scene would likely be shot like this. But shift the frame over and the audience is looking right at the woman as she turns around. Another option is movement. You can have something move into the frame, or move the camera to put something in the frame. Finally, there's lighting, where part of the background is lit in a way to reveal something. These frequently take place at night when something can slowly emerge from or disappear into the shadows. If you want to see these in action, then I suggest you watch just about any film directed by a Japanese or Korean director. A perfect example is Takashi Shimizu, who loves using camera movement in Ju-on to set up his scares early on. Then for the rest of the film, the audience is looking anywhere but at the lead character. It allows them to notice Toshio quickly appear in the corner, or in the reflection on a door. And we can also see the other strategies used too. Here, the framing tells the audience to look to the left. And here, the lighting on the ghost in the window immediately draws our eye to it. But sometimes you don't want to draw attention to the background, and instead you want the scare to feel as natural as possible. To do this, you essentially shoot the scene so it stands on its own with nothing there. Don't adjust the lighting or the framing. You can still have movement in the scene, just make sure it keeps the same pacing and that the framing doesn't make it feel out of place. Take this scene from It Chapter 1. Early on, we see the librarian moving behind Ben, so when she turns around to face him, we don't think anything of it at first. You might only notice it the second time it cuts to it. But frame the scene like this, and it's so obvious that it loses any scare factor. This is something Ari Aster does exceptionally well. If you've watched any of his films, then you've certainly seen a shot like this. It's just one of the many examples of how he blends figures in with the background, but he's also capable of even more unique setups. Here we have an establishing shot from earlier in the film, but when it switches to night, we see the cult members scattered around the house. How he even has background scares that actually exist in the foreground. But perhaps most creative of all is this extremely ambiguous shot from Midsummer, where we see her sister's face in the trees. These types of ambiguous shots go beyond not drawing attention to them and are so subtle that many people won't even notice them. These shots are without a doubt the rarest type of background scare, but if you've seen anything from Mike Flanagan, then you've probably seen one. Or not, because, you missed it. But in a way, that's really the essence of what makes them so good. He utilizes shadows and odd locations in a way that the scares are noticeable and simultaneously easy to miss, like this ghost hiding behind the ladder. And perhaps the best example is the statues in The Haunting of Hill House that start the shot looking to the left, but then pivot while off screen to watch the character leaving the room. Scares like this are so great because they're almost imperceivable, but ambiguous scares can still be very in your face if viewed from a different perspective. By this, I of course mean It Follows, which uses them in an interesting way, always placing people walking in the background like in this scene. The ambiguity doesn't lie in whether there's a person there, but in whether that figure is the creature or just some random person walking. But regardless of whether it's ambiguous or plainly obvious, there's a pattern in almost all the clips I've shown today. The character or characters on screen hardly ever notice what we see in the background. This might make them seem unnecessary, but their quality lies not in anything physical, but in perspective and implication. We see the voyeuristic qualities of the antagonist. To put it simply, the audience has to watch whatever's lurking in the background waiting to strike, and even if it doesn't, the knowledge that it's there and always watching causes every scene to have tension and puts the viewer on edge. So all this brings me back to Inside. To me, this scene highlights everything mentioned previously. It starts out ambiguous, but as the camera slowly zooms out, the framing draws focus to her silhouette, and the lighting ever so perfectly highlights her face. She eventually disappears into the shadows, leaving us, the viewer, with the knowledge that she's roaming the house. It's an absolutely perfect setup for the rest of the film, and for me, goes down as one of horror's all-time greatest background scares.